Hey folks, got a question about a superhero? Saw something in a comic that you want to know more about? Have a page or panel that makes you say, what the heck was that about? Well, now there's somebody that you can turn to. Welcome to the Four-Kolor Kitty. Hello and welcome to the first video version of Four-Kolor Kitty. I am your host, Patrick Black, and in future episodes we will be taking a rather quirky look at the world of superhero comics. However, this first edition, like most superhero comics themselves, will be an introduction to the Four-Kolor Kitty and what it's about, giving you a look at the history, the backstory, if you will, of this rather unique and, I hope, fun series. We will start by taking a quick look on how I got interested in superheroes. My first memories regarding superheroes were watching reruns of the classic Batman series, starring Adam West. Mind you, at the time I was too young to realize that this was a spoof. All I knew was that there was this man and his friend who dressed in nifty costumes, had neat gadgets, and went around fighting bad guys. What can I say? I was only a few years old back then. Anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. My next connection came from, of all things, Slurpee cups. I know, an odd thing to tie to superhero comics, but this was from a series of collectible plastic cups that featured superheroes. This one in particular featured Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. I didn't know who he really was, or even who the Fantastic Four were then. However, the cup had a little description of him, including how he could stretch into all sorts of forms, and it also said he was a scientist. Because of that, as a child, I wanted to become a scientist. I stopped wanting that when I learned how tough science was in school, and that didn't mean I could gain superpowers or travel to outer space on a regular basis. At about the same time, I was also watching old episodes of the 1967 Spider-Man cartoon. You know the one, with the well-known opening song.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
As with most of the cartoons produced at the time, it was a bit light on production values and made use of stock animation that they could and would repeat to fill in space. Still, to a youngster, that was high adventure. I really didn't become interested in the actual comics until the early 80s. It was at that time I got introduced to the Uncanny X-Men. In particular, issue 168, entitled Professor Xavier is a Jerk. Hey! If a title that calls one of the main characters a jerk doesn't catch your attention, what will? It was actually a good starting point, as I not only got to know the characters, the subsequent stories included important plot points, such as why Rogue joined the X-Men, who the Morlocks are, and the whole Dark Phoenix thing by way of Cyclops' romance with Madeline Pryor. Between you and me, I think Madeline Pryor got a raw deal in the end, but that's for another time. My older brother was already a collector, and I spent many hours reading from his stash. I thrilled at Secret Wars, was stunned and delighted by Crisis on Infinite Earths, and thoroughly enjoyed everything from the All-Star Squadron to the Legion of Superheroes, and of course, the X-Men. Eventually, I started picking up titles on my own from the local comic shop. It became a Friday night tradition for my brother, a friend of his, and myself to pick up our comics. I know Great story. But what's that got to do with this show? Well, it happened many years later. I'd been playing on a partially social, partially role-playing internet text-based game for some time. This particular muck, as they are called, had a semi-weekly web-based newspaper. The fellow who put it together was looking for additional material for it and asked if I would write something. This sparked an idea. I had already been a fan of a website known as Uncle Cheek's The Toy Wonders Silver Age Comics, a conversational and humorous look at older comics. Inspired by his writings, I decided to give it a shot myself. Sadly, Uncle Cheek's site went down several years ago. An archive of the text of the various articles and essays he wrote could still be found at the time of this episode's release, though unfortunately all the images were not saved. My first column, much like this episode, was to describe how the column was supposed to work. Folks would send in questions and topics, and I would address them in my own comical way. This never really took off as much as I had hoped, but I managed to keep finding material for new columns almost weekly for the past couple of years. One of my biggest surprises was that an artist going by the name Chanspot did a picture of my online persona in superheroic garb that has graced my column ever since. Yes, it's a cat. I like cats and decided to use one for my avatar. Moving on! Why Four-Kolor Kitty? Four-Kolor describes both comics, which traditionally were printed by using 4 different color inks, and the fact that my avatar has 4 colors in his description: white fur with a patch of black, a pink nose, and blue eyes. Now, you might notice that in this picture showing him, he has a black nose. The artist was working from memory at the time, and I thought it would be terribly ungrateful to have him redo it over such a minor point. That leads us to now. You see, recently, my friend, the editor, had to take some time off for health reasons. During that time, I was introduced to a wonderful online series called Atop the Fourth Wall. Atop the Fourth Wall was actually based on the host, Nkara's, text reviews of really bad comics. Once again, I was inspired to follow in his footsteps and make the leap to video. So, here we are at the end of the first episode. In the future, I will be taking new suggestions for topics and questions to answer. The rules for this are simple. First, I'm most versed in the mainstream superhero comics, DC and Marvel. Oh, I've dabbled occasionally with independent comics and have some knowledge about non-superhero comics, so if I'm offered a topic or question on one that is particularly interesting, you might see it. However, it may not be as comprehensive or entertaining. Second, if you ask my opinion on a topic and I give it, remember that you did ask for my opinion. While I am open to other views, remember that mine may not be the same as yours. If it happens that my view doesn't match what yours is, please do not be sending me a lot of hate mail. Rule number 3. There is no rule number 3. That's right, that's all the rules I really have. Well, aside from common sense, this is supposed to be a family-safe show, so if your question or suggestion isn't, it's a safe bet I'm not going to use it. That's about all the time we have for this introduction to the Four-Kolor Kitty. Next time, I'll be rolling up my sleeves, such as they are, and actually diving into those comics. So until next time, this is Patrick Black for Four-Kolor Kitty, and I'll be seeing you in the funny pages.